Hope you had a good break. Got some treats. We got snacks in the hallway. All that good stuff. Next up, we have one of the greatest financial minds in the country. She's with the Federal Reserve of Atlanta. She is one of the OGs of Louisiana Jumpstart. And I will tell you, she always brings it with her presentation. So without further ado, declare Loup of the Federal Reserve at Atlanta, New Orleans branch.
Thank you. Okay. Can you hear me? Yes. I ask that because the older I get, the more clumsy I get, and I cannot click, hold, flip papers, use my glasses, and not trip over this clear podium. It's too much to ask. If you cannot hear me, just tell me to be louder. That's one thing that most people haven't had to do, but we are going to give it a whirl. So, one thing I need to say, I am not a great financial mom. What I am is someone who likes to use things that are happening around me, wherever possible, to forward a lesson. Right now, we have a tremendous opportunity to teach our students and ourselves not only some good personal financial habits because of this crazy economy we're scrolling around in, but we also have a unique opportunity to have them experience a massive shift, whether permanent or temporary, we don't know yet, but a shift in our world of work. Now, I'm going to ask you a few questions. I'm going to ask you to stand up because it's easier for me to see, and it's going to wake you up. But also because I need to know a little bit about you. I do tend to make things up as I go. And while I was sitting back there earlier this morning, I came up, I was thinking about two little activities that we're going to do that literally were just happening while I was sitting there. So we'll see how it plays out. But first off, to get started, we're going to stand up. This is a stand up, sit down. Let's just get your blood flowing. I want to know, and some of this is to help me, some of this is to help you. Well, you can sit down first. I'll tell you when to sit down. We're going to get to know a little bit about each other. If you did this earlier, I apologize. I may have missed that. First off, I want to know, stand up if you have attended one of our Jumpstart sessions before. Okay. Sit down. If you're not standing up, everybody needs to look around the room. See who's standing up. Stand up if you have been teaching personal finance before today. Okay? Sit down. Stand up. I see some people aren't getting exercise. Stand up if you currently include career exploration or job readiness or anything that falls under that umbrella of getting our kids ready for the workforce in any of the classes you teach. All right? Good deal? Yeah? Somebody's going to stand up soon. Some of us. Stand up if the only thing you've ever done in your professional life has been a teacher. Stand up if when you were in high school or considering your career, education is what you chose. Look around the room. All right? Here. One more question. Stand up if you or someone close to you, meaning like a family member or something like, not just somebody you ran across in the grocery, but someone close to you has changed careers since the pandemic. All right. Good. Thank you very much. Some people didn't stand up, I don't think, for anything, but I'm going to figure that out why. I'll make you stand up in a minute. The The reason I brought those questions out is a couple of things. One, I'm going to probably do something I've done before, but it's been so many years. So if you've seen the boot camp before, you probably saw this activity. It's been so many years, I probably forgot how it went. But it's sometimes things are just too good to leave sitting in the drawer. Two, I want to get a feel for where you are in your career or in the teaching of personal finance and career exploration. I think those two things go together. Leslie used the phrase earlier in her presentation that we're going to, I wrote that down too, because we're going to use it later on. And that was, shoot, I forgot what, something with habit. What did you say? Habit, something,
Financial habits and norms.
habits and norms. Habits and norms. Habits and norms is key in preparing our students for success in entering the job market. We want them to develop the habit of being able to present themselves, to develop the habit of being able to articulate who they are, what they can do for a particular company, how their skills relate to that particular need, and I want them to develop the habit of constant awareness of what's happening around them. So at the beginning of this year, my colleague in the Nashville office, we spent a lot of time working together, and everything's been virtual for the last bunch of years. Oh, and I'm sorry, I failed to introduce myself. I was introduced earlier. But I'm Claire. I am from New Orleans. I've been with the Federal Reserve Bank now for 23 years, and I will have stood up for a couple of things that I asked those questions. One, when I was in high school and thought about what I wanted to, not really high school, probably when I first went back to college, when I went to college to figure out what I wanted to do, education was what I was selecting for very different reasons. Because in my mind, back then, I said, okay, I really don't want to work. I only want to work 9 months out of the year, if that much. I want to get off early. I want to have holidays early, off, and I don't want to do anything too hard. So I went into elementary education. That did not last. I didn't actually teach. I didn't even finish an elementary education. I went to one visit and spent a day with some second graders and immediately went back and changed my major. I changed the major to business ed because I said, oh, this is going to be good because in high school I have some of my favorite teachers were my business teachers. And I figured, okay, this will be fun. This is way back when we had typewriters. I said, I can do this. I can yell at people just like I got yelled at. I got to use a stopwatch. I got to yell, speak fast, speak slow, check spelling, check grammar, punctuation, all that good stuff. And then when I graduated, we didn't have, that was at the downslope of business education in the state, so I didn't get a job in high school, but I've been teaching ever since in a variety of different places. I used to carry a stick when I was in the classroom. I wore a stopwatch. People used to think I was a coach, but no, I was teaching shorthand. But I also had a big ruler, yardstick. One of my students brought it to me one time. It was a big yardstick, and it was on a leather strap, and it was 1 inch by inch, so it wasn't flat. And it said on the side, no one measures up. And they gave that to me because I always found fault with something. But then they also told me at the end that it was worthwhile in some cases because sometimes you have to be perfect. Sometimes. But in life, we're not. So what we're going to do today is look at the imperfect workforce that is around us. And when we start, that's kind of wander, my brain goes. I started telling you about my friend Jackie, my colleague in Nashville. We started working on this presentation because we were thinking about what's happened to teaching, or the traditional teachings of career exploration from our perspective. What did we used to do? And how has that changed? So let's take a look at a couple of things. First off, another thing I got to tell you is that anything I tell you today, because I'm not a brilliant financial mind, here. Everything I say today is my opinion, It's not representative of the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta, the Federal Reserve System, Louisiana Jumpstart, my children, anyone else but me. So let's start thinking a little bit about our workforce that we have, or our workplace around us. Just tell me, think about me, you haven't been here 100 years, but let's just pretend you remember something from history. What kind of major shifts have happened in our workplace in the last 100 years? Technology made some big changes. What?
Changing manufacturing, like less manufacturing?
Changing in manufacturing and how? Because of technology or for other reasons?
Probably because of technology and because of the globalization, like a lot of manufacturing moving out over the U.S.
Specialization, things like, yeah. What else? Yes.
Working remotely.
Lawsuits. Let's go further back than lawsuits. Yes.
Workers are more transient. They move around a lot.
Workers are more transient. Okay.
People are working remotely.
Hmm?
People are working remotely.
People are. Well, that's current change.
It used to be that women only did certain jobs and men did certain jobs, so that's shifted in view of
Absolutely. We had lots of change in who did what, where, and how. And if we went back further, I'm going to go back way back. Is that we have had these. We talked about it just a second ago. We've had major shifts, and I'm just saying in the last 100+ years, in our workforce. Some of these shifts have been permanent. Some of them were temporary. Some of them were because of people moving around. Some of them were because of technology. Some of them were because of external forces like war. So for example, back at the turn of the 20th century, as was mentioned, technology, changes in manufacturing, changes in skills needed to do particular jobs because individuals who had used to have a variety of skills in, let's say, some kind of machine making, in some cases the job changed and now they were just doing a repetitive task. Maybe they were just cutting cogs out of something with a cog cutter. We had a change during World War II when a large swath of our population went to serve in the war, not only here, but went to serve in the war, and then it forced women into the workplace. And that changed a lot. What you were mentioning about the changes, the roles of women in the workplace. But that shift, that one, was somewhat temporary in that once the war was ended, many of those women went back to their home roles and men returned to the workforce. We talked about additional technology. We also talked about, well, we haven't talked about it, but those same women who were working during World War II, also, with help, produced the baby boom. And the baby boomers, into the 1960s, is when that first batch, the late 60s, early 70s, is when that first batch of baby boomers were hitting the workforce. That was also a tremendous change. We had a huge population increase in folks entering the workforce, and that started off a 30-year trend of more and more women entering and staying in the workforce. I say that because sometimes you need to look back to look forward. Our world changes, and we've adapted. Our students need to adapt, and our students will continue to adapt. But some of the things that were set into place at the beginning of 2020, well, not the beginning, but mid, whenever everything went to hell in a handbag, may, and I say may, have already done some change back. What I'm going to tell you today is a story, and it's anecdotal. I am not an economist. I do not play one on TV. But economics, even in its most basic form, is important in our function, basically. And personal finance, career exploration, all of these things is economics in action. We have to be able to, as we teach our students how to prepare for their next career, we need to have them understand just some basic measures of what's happening around them. So let me just talk about some basic measures. You know, we talked about this. This is one basic measure. And I know you can't, the light is kind of funny, but here, it says closed just for a little while. And then it says temporarily closed until the crisis is over. And then it's closed until further notice. And then it's the whole world is closed. This is an unusual event. This event has put into play abnormal economic conditions. You know, we're sitting here thinking about the rising prices that we have. We're thinking about the low unemployment numbers that we have. We're thinking about, well, that doesn't make sense, because normally if we were in a situation with inflation, it's because we got everybody working, everybody's making money, there's a high demand. Well, we still have high demand, but what our problem is supply. We have supply issues, all because of other stuff happening. We've also had a change in the way we work. So let's see some of these things happen. Back in, hope you can see this. And I'm just using this picture to tell a story. Like I said, I'm not an economist. But the Bureau of Labor and Statistics and one of the Fed products called FRED, Federal Reserve Economic Data, where you can just go there and pull up all kinds of stuff, is a great little tool. Anyway, you can see just by this point, even if you can't read the numbers, that in a time period, in April of 2020, everything stopped. I don't think you can think of another time when that occurred. Everything stopped. Now, the ramifications of everything stopping means if you look like, let's say 10 years from now, we look back in the history books and we say, oh, look, we had a massive unemployment in April 2020. Oh my God, what happened? Did we have a depression? We didn't have anything happen just because, all right, well, you know, demand stopped and everything else. No, we were told, shut your doors, stay home. Across the world. That was unusual. But the ramifications have been lasting, at least now 2.5 years later, or 2+ years later. Yes, if you look at just the basic numbers and say, okay, unemployment was massive in April of 2020, but then as we look forward into, let's say, June of 2020, oh look, jobs have come back. We didn't add jobs. No, we didn't come back to work. I like to use this chart for two reasons. One, it does show what happened when everybody has to stay home and stop working. It's also a great illustration for our students to say, okay, what happens if you don't work? Well, if you don't work, we run out of stuff, like toilet paper. And money. We need to work. The economy thrives on what we do. On what we build, on what we create, on just the movement of money through the system. We can't just stay home and wait for somebody to take care of us. I actually had someone approach me, this just popped into my head. I had someone approach me this past summer. I was at a teacher conference, and there was a gentleman working at the facility, and he said something like, I can't even tell you what my response was because I think I've almost passed out and I probably got picked up off the floor. But he said something like, well, I just don't understand why we have to even work anymore. Why can't we just stay home and the government give us money? And I'm thinking, okay, this is not even a young person. This is an older person who's become detached from how our economy works. So there are some things about basic economics that we probably need to keep in tune of, and that is, how does our labor work? How does the world of work, how is it important to our continuing to function, and how do we look at some basic measures to see what decisions we need to make? So there's 3 measures that I want to talk about just very briefly, because you hear about them all the time. And so if I was, a young person, or if I was encouraging a young person to go out and look for a job, one of the things that might be important in that conversation is say, well, look, what's the unemployment rate? Because if I knew the unemployment rate, what might that tell me about the availability of jobs?
Are the jobs available?
Are there jobs available? Right. If we have like a 0 unemployment rate, that means that everybody is working, or everybody who could possibly be working is working. And it might mean that there are fewer opportunities. If we have a large unemployment rate, a high one, it might mean that there are more opportunities. Might is the operative word. So we're going to look at unemployment rate. We're going to look at what is the labor force. What does it mean to be part of the labor force? And then we're going to look at something called labor force participation rate. Very briefly, because these three things combined are necessary to understand what's happening around us. So first off, the labor force, when you talk about, okay, well, you want to enter the labor force. Well, who's in the labor force? The labor force is people who are over 16 years of age. It's individuals who are currently working full-time. And it's individuals who are currently not working but looking for work. One of the things that was an outcropping of the pandemic was a large reduction in our labor force because we had a tremendous amount of people leave. And they haven't come back. You see staff shortage signs everywhere. They have not returned to the workforce because they are not looking for work. I don't know what they're doing. Maybe they won the lottery. I'd like to find out. But there's a large percentage of people that aren't currently working. So when you're looking at these measures of unemployment, it's not everybody in this country. It's everybody who meets these criteria. They're 16 years of age or older. They are working or looking for work. Not the military, not the institutionalized prison, hospital, whatever, okay? That's the measure. So when you start thinking about unemployment rate, labor force is key. It's not everybody, it's the ones out there looking. Once you've removed yourself from the labor force, if you're active military, you're not in that count. If you're just sitting at home, you're not in that count. That's important to know, because numbers tell a lot of stories. A lot of them are stories. Depends on how you look at it. Now the participation rate, this is important. This is everyone who is employed, and we're talking full-time employment, plus those individuals who are unemployed. That's the ones looking for work. So we're looking for people who are working or people who want to have a job. That makes up the labor force. And we divide it by, this is the important thing, the civilian population who are of age. They might not be in the labor force. Okay, so that means there's a percent, what people are participating in our economy, those who are employed or looking for work. And then we look at what's unemployment rates. This is just brief. So when you listen to the unemployment rate, and today's rate was, I looked at it this morning, it's 3.7%. It went up over last month, just a dot. It was 3.6 in, what month are we in? October. Or maybe in September, and that was October numbers. So if we look here at the unemployment rate, this is what, whenever you hear that measure, when people say, oh, the unemployment rate is great, oh, we've added all these jobs, or we've done this, that, or the other. The unemployment rate is a combination of all of the people who are in the labor force, working, not working, but looking, appropriate age, non-military, non-institutionalized, over 16, divided by those who are employed plus unemployed. This number over here is a little bit expanded, but it's called, the youth is underutilization rate, and this also adds people who are marginally attached or part-time for some other reason. So marginally attached means you might be working, but you're not really working full-time, or you might be working multiple jobs, but you're not in that measure of the full-time employment, or you might be working temp work. It's a different thing. You're working, but you're not a full-time employee. Now, I bring that up only because when we hear numbers, when we think of labor force, when we think of what jobs are available, those three numbers are being used. Who's looking for jobs? Who's working? How many jobs are available? Where are the other people? So what we had happen back in 2020 was something that's been called the Great Disruption and the Great Resignation. Because if we look at what happened here, we had a change in the job seekers market. For a good long while now, it's been a buyer's market. I'm here, I want to work, I'm going to make the rules. Yes, I want to flip a hamburger and I want $22 an hour to do it. Maybe I don't even flip the hamburger. Maybe I just open the package and stick it on the grill, because the grill probably flips it for me. Maybe I don't even do that. Maybe I stand by the kiosk while somebody else comes in and presses in their order, and I'm just basically standing there as a, I don't even know why anymore, but I want to have $22 an hour to do that. So there was a change in the marketplace, meaning because there were so many jobs available, because so much left, we pulled the lights out, everybody stay home. Well, when the lights came back on, not everybody went back. We have a change in what's happening from an employer perspective, in that they've had to meet some of those demands. They've had to meet those demands in some rising wages. They've had to meet some of those demands in change in the way they work, the remote work possibility, in more perks, in more, a term that just cracks me up to no end, work-life balance. If you work with a lot of young folks, and please don't take this as this is an observation, this is not a personal slight, but I have some close friends who are in different industries that require, tons of work. Like, for example, attorneys. And if you know anybody who's an attorney, particularly when they first get out of law school, they are working like crazy. And then, depending on the kind of law they practice, they may be working like crazy forever. And one of the observations I constantly get from this friend of mine is that I just don't understand. We have this young crop of attorneys who they come into the office and they show up at 10:30 and they think they leave at 5, and they keep saying, well, I have to have my personal time, and I'm thinking, what? What kind of mindset is that? So there's been a change in the mindset of workers. We also had a huge early retirement. People were offered the opportunity to retire because, okay, we didn't know how long things were going to be shut down. Some people took it. Maybe they had cushions of savings and they were able to fall back on that. That might have been a good thing. Maybe because we weren't spending any money, they were able to save a little more and got a little more comfortable. Since that pandemic, more people, and I'm going to say particularly young, this is an anecdotal, just my assumption, but more people have been willing to just up and change a job and quit one before they have another. For me, for being an old school kind of person, you never quit a job before you have another unless there's some really serious problem going on. You have to have something lined up for that jump.
And don't burn your
And
bridges.
even younger individuals, like, for example, my son, he's younger than me, but I keep reminded, you have a son that's 40. I don't know how that happened, but anyway. In his career, I freak out every time he would want to change jobs. But it's very good for him in the kind of job that he's in. He's in IT, and every step has been a good one. And he's one of the few people that I've met who actually lost his job during the pandemic, got hired by his previous employer, and got a 10% raise. I don't know how that works. And then also we talked about some people not rushing back to work the way they did. Think about that. I mean me, I work from home. I used to always do that. I mean, I had that freedom or opportunity because I was on the road, we were doing programs, we were all over the state of Louisiana, Mississippi. But I did go into the office, somewhat regularly. But even if I was at home working, I still got up in the morning and I got dressed and did all that kind of stuff. Now, I have meetings in my pajamas. Nobody knows that. And I've even gotten to the point that when I've done webinars that we're even recording, I don't even put makeup on. As I realized, I got glasses on, nobody can see my eyes anyway. One step closer to that retirement. But here's a picture of that labor force situation. Remember that big old drop in jobs back in April? Well, everybody fell out of the labor force. All right? But when everything worked back up in May, only 60% of the labor force returned. So 40% of the people were still home. That's okay because not every job reopened right away, right? We remember that. That's a normal thing. Not everything reopened. Not everybody went back full time. I know at my job, the people who worked on site, they were on rotational things, so they all weren't in the same room at the same time and things like that, except that they were having money that was different. But here, notice this is May 2020, you probably can't see it. That's the labor force in February 2020 before the hell broke loose. The participation rate. Here we are in October 2020. It doesn't match up to February. This chunk of people haven't returned. 30% of this chunk of people are women. Where did they go? Why are they not working?
Got a sugar daddy.
It made some serious issues. I remember back then when it happened, because they closed everything down. It was March 13th, Friday 13th, the government closed everything down.
Mm-hmm.
That was my child's senior year, so the kids that graduated 2020, they really lost out on everything. So I understand that. And then a lot of people didn't go back to work because they were saying like some of the daycares were closed. People have kids, they didn't want to keep the kids, so that's a lot of things. But then they had programs where people would stay home, so it was kind of like some of the jobs you were talking about. It was, I mean, like some people would say, they can add as a credit. Basically, it was cost effective for them to stay home than go back to the job not paying them. You can pay more money to stay home. You save the gas. Why would you go back to work for even these companies that were paying us as far as like people say restaurants and all that?
Mm-hmm.
They're making more money staying home.
Absolutely. That's probably one of the key reasons because of that change. Because you were forced now, in most cases it might have been women, but you were forced now to stay home. Maybe you were homeschooling your kids, maybe you got the kids, and it's too expensive to go back. That's something that's happened in our economy that was kicked off, or at least maybe exacerbated by the pandemic, that's now affecting that change and that shift in the workforce. But these kinds of changes, minus the labor force participation rate, have offered some opportunities. First off, job security. My goodness. If you have a job, it's not impossible, but chances are, if that business really, really needs you, you probably got some job security. Chances are. Geography. This is a key thing in career exploration. Some of the things I used to teach years ago was, location, location, location. Where you work or where you choose to work can affect a number of things. One, it's going to affect how much housing you have to pay if you have to move. Two, it's going to affect how much you earn because different parts of the country earn more money. Think about that now. In many cases, you don't have that hindrance. You can sit here in New Orleans and work in Minnesota. Or you can sit here in New Orleans and work in New York and get paid New York.
Yep.
Now, some companies are getting smart to that and making some changes. But you have that opportunity that was more difficult before. You didn't have to actually pick up your family and move. I have a friend right now who used to live in Alexandria. She worked for years and years and years in Alexandria. They wanted to move back to Covington. She was going to quit her job. Her job said, no, you don't need to do that. You can work. Come back to Alexandria for like a meeting once a month, and we're good with that. That's an opportunity that chances are you didn't have before. But the other thing that we have is additional benefits, which is more important for us to teach our students about things beyond just the paycheck, and also the continuing learning mindset. You have a better opportunity now in some of these jobs to learn more skills, because the idea of having someone come into a job and do one job is probably, I'm going to say probably, again, these are anecdotal, this is my assumption based on me reading the story, slim to nil. You're going to be cross-trained. You're going to be expected to be able to do that. That's a good thing for you because you're developing more skills for yourself. One of the things at the beginning of this year, there's always a survey of jobs, a survey of employers that the Fed does. And one of the things that they asked about, what are the things that you are concerned, this is a question the Fed was asking certain firms based on 2022, what are you worried about with inflation or labor issues or supply chain? And at that time, their biggest concerns were still labor, quality, and availability. Here's some of their quotes. The lack of entry-level workers at affordable market rates. Lack of labor is pushing up operational costs, and it's pushing up what they're paying individuals. Finding employees is difficult. These are things that are good for us in some way, but we want to make sure that we're producing quality students. And then also, staffing, salary, and wage pressures are becoming difficult. You have heard the phrase, what goes up must come down? Next, gravity. Eventually, there is a top. You're not going to always, yes?
What industry are these sacks?
I'm sorry?
What industry are these sacks taken from? Is it retailers, manufacturers?
It's across different industries. I can send you the link, and let me say that. All of this stuff, I've made some massive changes to my presentation last night. So I will send out, either we'll do it through a shared folder, or I'll send it to email. Everyone will have the presentation, but you'll have links to all the articles that I used, as all of the references that I used. But I can look that up for you when I sit down after this, okay? Yes?
Can I make one more comment? And I agree with what you're saying, like, where's the labor force? We're all asking that question. What we were just saying, I think the labor force is here. With all of the delivery drivers and online groceries, I think that brick and mortar employee has now gone to a flex where I can turn my button on when I want to work and turn it off, and they're doing things like that.
Yep.
There's a big demand, and the demand is being met in that particular sector.
Yep. It's another change in our workplace situation and a change in the job availability. And that kind of turn on, turn off is probably going to skew some of the employment data. Because that's not an individual who I'm guessing. Someone who just works a couple hours here and there and something, let's say I'm an Uber driver or Uber Eats or whatever, you're not being recorded as a full-time employee kind of salary kind of thing. It's a, what do they call it, the gig economy, gig jobs now?
Has that data even
So,
been captured yet?
I'm sorry?
Has that data even been captured yet as being a type of employer, a type of employee?
I will check.
Okay.
Write that down. When I come back, I'm going to sit down because I have some links that I want to look up to answer those questions.
When you can.
Okay. One of the things that I wanted to look at, though, is after all of this change in our workforce, what's been happening since then? And I think the story can be told in the headlines. This is back in May of this year. The Great Resignation is far from over. Workers are quitting in record numbers, but what are they looking for in a workplace? That's from off of, I think it was Fox Business on the economy section. August, the great resignation turns to the great regret as worker needs are not being met. Survey shows 26% of people who quit their job during what was dubbed the great resignation already regret it. The growing trend of quiet quitting and whether you should worry about being quiet fired. We'll talk about that in a second. You heard about quiet quitting? Quiet quitting is when you have like these remote folks and whatnot, and they're doing just enough not to get fired, or they're working two jobs, and then eventually just kind of, because they're disengaged. Quiet firing is the flip side of that. It's when all of a sudden, we don't see you anymore. You're not getting the raises. You're not getting the assignments. You're not getting the promotions. Maybe you'll leave. The great remorse takes over as this was November 12th in Fortune magazine. What's today? The 18th, just a couple days ago. Great remorse takes over the great resignation as most workers who quit their job are having a hard time finding a new one. Now we're coming into the flip, possibly. All of those excess jobs that used to be filled, but now aren't filled because a chunk of the population didn't return, or because we have people who said, I don't want to go back to work yet, or it's too expensive for me to go back to work, or we have kids who are doing, changing jobs like they change their clothes, or we have other people who are doing multiple small things. Eventually, employers are not going to be able to fill those open positions, and they're going to have to adapt. They're going to have to take those jobs off the market. They're not going to be there anymore. They're just going to have to work around it. When that happens, a couple of things. That geography situation that wasn't a hindrance, now it improves or increases the competition because everybody will be fighting for those cushy jobs. Cushy meaning remote type of thing. They're not really cushy, I can tell you. I work long hours even though I work in my pajamas. What we're having now is employee burnout and turnover. So for what's that happening, those people who talk about job security, they're carrying a heavy load. They have to make up the difference for what's not there. They might be getting burned out. They might not be feeling appreciated. They're probably getting raises, but I bet you possibly, I'm making this up now, maybe they aren't getting what they're hiring new people for. That happens in the world. The fears of out of sight, out of mind, that's that quiet quitting kind of thing, and quiet firing. That's actually happened. I know a couple of young people who, maybe not necessarily the quiet firing, but the out of sight, out of mind, because they started remote jobs during the pandemic, and when the company needed to lay people off, who was the ones they laid off? The ones they don't see or hear or touch. We added them, they're remote, we can get rid of them. So there's a flux happening right now in the workforce. That's important. And then we talked about, y'all mentioned it earlier, that higher cost of transportation and childcare and homeschooling options and inflation in general. Sometimes it's just too expensive to go back to work, so we are adapting. So what we're walking into now, I'm thinking, I'm pretending, and I am surmising, remember it's just my opinion, not representative of anybody else, that maybe we're moving into a change in trend of what's happening. So our students who might be coming up for the last couple of years noticing that somebody's, making all of this money by posting videos on whatever they're posting videos on, or making all of this money, maybe making more than a typical market wage to do less than a full-time job, possibly that trend is changing. This is just an increase in jobs. Jobs are coming back. All of this information, this is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. I know it's kind of hard to see, but the big bold pink and kind of red line, that's healthcare services and hospitals. Yes, those jobs are coming back, but now they're still shorthanded. And then also the red line, the second big one, that's food services and drinking establishments and those kinds of things are coming back, but they're not back to where they were. So we're getting there, it's just slow. What's slower coming back? Retail. I just read an article recently that said, you know, some folks rely on seasonal work, the Christmas season hiring and whatnot. That might affect our students the most, where some retailers aren't looking to hire as much this year because they're concerned that people aren't going to be spending as much since we have these other issues with the prices. So that's going to be a double-edged sword that we just need to watch out for. So the point of this being is, yes, our unemployment rate is 3.7 right now. Yes, it's a lot better, and meaning lower, than it was back in April. This particular map is off the BLS, which is great because if you actually, on the real site, and hovered over these states, you could get specific information for that specific state. It talks about the rate and what the areas are of that are still lacking. But overall, if someone just said, oh, the state of the economy, this is my opinion, the state of the economy must be pretty good, we only have 3.7 unemployment. And I guess my point being is, it's all relative. Know where the numbers come from. But know that our students are walking into a potential change. So how can we help our students navigate some of these challenges that we have? Yeah.
For the most part that I see with my students, a lot of times they go and get a job with the mindset that the job needs them. Of course they do, but in their mind they want to work a job like they work at school. So the mindset of the students is different, so the quality of work is different, and that causes a lot of transit in jobs because the employee will fire them and they're trying to figure out why they're being fired, but also with industry driving education. Teachers being forced to teach whatever test they're there, and no one's really listening to us tell them that these kids are not ready for this workforce. Whenever they go to work, the expectation of the employee versus the expectations of the students it's here. It's a big
disconnect.
And so they want us to push out quality students, but they have to understand the mentality of the students is not there. So I'm not as independent of a worker as you think that I am. I'm more dependent of a worker.
Did we talk in advance, and did I pay you anything to say? All right. What you're saying is dead on right, and what we can use is Leslie's phrase about the habits and norms. Making good behaviors that you were talking about. Increasing our focus on understanding what's happening in the workforce and what skills that we can affect for them. First off, real quick, this is just one of the things we want to do is make sure they understand the differences in the kinds of jobs, because that's a self-reflection. What kind of work do I thrive in? Well, we don't know yet, so we're going to set out to find out. We don't know what we like to do. Maybe we know what we don't like to do. Use that information. Have them understand that if you want to be able to work remote, that's a whole different set of skills and a whole different kind of job opportunities than someone who is working, like say, for example, in the healthcare industry, in education, or truck driving. You can't work remote. Well, sort of remote, but you're in your truck. It's different. So understanding the differences in those environments and what that is going to mean to you in terms of commitment to that job. Focusing on power skills. That's a new one. Somebody called it power skills, and I said, well, that sounds better than soft skills, because soft skills sound too soft. And we need to be hard with our soft skills. We need to be good at this. We have to be strong in our communication, in our speaking and writing and listening. And if we can do that to the classroom, I don't care how. I don't even know how to do it, because I was teaching it. I do an online class for some educators, and I was told at the beginning that I could not grade. I I couldn't grade spelling and grammar, and I'm saying, oh my God, I'm very afraid because when I'm reading some work from some fellow teachers in a different state, and I can't understand what the sentence is saying, that's a problem. Because now we're passing that information on. So we have to find ways to practice and make it the norm. So here we're going to do. We are going to do some practicing real quick. I know I have a couple of minutes, but hang on. Real quick. If you've seen this before, great. If you didn't, I'm going to do it in real short way to do this. This is a very simple activity. It's produced by the Department of Labor. I'll have the link for you for the curriculum piece for it. And it's called Shapes. And all it is one of the very first step, very simple way to do a personal self-reflection. And this is how it would work. And if I wouldn't have rattled on so much earlier, we could do it. Basically, you show the kids these 5 shapes, and you say, pick one. Which one speaks to you? Which one do you like best? Which one looks like you? Which one do you want to be? Whatever your decision is, pick a shape. And then you have to have that student tell you, or you can do it too, maybe we'll do it now. Maybe I'll come back and ask later. Pick a shape. See what it means to you. The idea here is having your student look at something and identifying some relationship they have with that shape. And now you're going to give them some kind of analysis of what that means. The idea is pick a shape, then find other people in your class, say, why do I like this shape? What does this mean to me? Why do I think I'm this shape? Why do I want to be a squiggle? Why do I think I'm a square? Have some relationship with that item. And then have your students mix up and find, let's say they're a squiggle. Find another squiggle and have a conversation about why. The reason is you're going to probably find many different things. One person is a squiggle because X. One person is a squiggle because Y. Somebody else is a square, and if you're listening to what that person is saying about why they choose to be a square, me as a student who might have been a squiggle says, wait a minute, I do that too. One of the simplest self-reflections is to start looking at the personalities. And then in this curriculum, they tell you this is really high level, not deep at all. It gives you the examples. You're going to have all of this information. The whole curriculum is free to download. I'll tell you where it is. And it kind of goes down the flow and says, what is this? Okay, if you're squiggly, maybe you're off the wall. Maybe you're creative. Maybe you're something else. If you're square, you like rules. You've got structure. If you're a rectangle, maybe you like rules, but you kind of bend them a little bit. There's all kinds of things that help that student start using words to identify how they are as an individual, because that's what they need to build on for their soft skills. That if they understand that they are a little bit too shy or they don't like to give up control, I know. This helps. Some other things, go to our website. It's very simple and you can play it later. Our website, I spent the last 4 years of my life. I learned a valuable lesson. I complained about our website and somebody said, okay, fix it. It took me 4 years, not because of me, but because of everybody else. So we completely redesigned it. It's very streamlined. If you haven't been to our website before, I encourage you to go to it at Atlanta Fed Education. It's all lessons that are there have been purged, meaning old ones have been thrown away. We wrote some new ones. We updated everything so it's all current. We also have new video content. We have a whole bunch of posters and things that you can use in your classroom. These are some of the lessons that we have that are very simple, fast kind of things. Soft skills for your future job. Gives you that practice ability, gives you activities to practice preparing for a job interview, answering, writing up, preparing a script to answer most common questions, and then basically giving you an opportunity and direction to have your kids, all right, tell me, what is it you want to do? How does this skill, have you demonstrated some strength? I don't know, I'm just making this up right now, but it has questions. And the idea is you have your kids prepare their answers, and throughout a given period of time that you choose, you're basically asking them, you're quizzing them. They're given different ways that they can practice these responses so that they become habit and norm. that they can articulate who they are. Same thing with Dream Today, Job Tomorrow. It gives you a great guided experience on how to learn about other jobs. Maybe your kids don't want to look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Maybe they don't know anybody who's currently working, but guess what? I bet every one of you work in a school, possibly, I'm guessing, or whatever workplace you are in, and I bet you have a coworker, and I bet that coworker's got a coworker, and I bet if you got the 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 coworkers together, you could give a great example to your students of what you did before. How did you get where you are? Because when I asked if everybody here had done something else, or had not done, had only been teaching, almost no one stood up. So you have some background. Use it, share it. Soft skills lingo bingo, again, just little short, quick ways to get used to the language of the workplace. How do I develop and become someone who is self-led, who has integrity? What do these terms mean? How can I practice it? How can it become habit and norm? I told you I'm going to send you this link, send you this sheet. It'll have a whole list of all of these pieces. Invest in What's Next, that's a curriculum, it's an online thing about job exploration. And what happens after high school. Navigate is a paper-based or online piece out of a Dallas Fed. But these are just a sampling, a drop in the bucket of some of the things that we have. This infographic poster, I'm going to pass these out because I don't have them with me. You can go online and order them. It's an entire set. We keep adding more and more and more. They hang up on the wall. We also have a book that goes along with it with an activity, at least one, for every single poster. You can get that. All of this is free. And then there's so much more. We have a financial tip series. Every month we're doing something that links you to real-time stuff, information, how to shop, save money during the holiday shopping, or how to prepare for your taxes, or what to do when you, something else. You got to pick insurance plans. Basic information. Economy Now. That's a great little app. If you can put that on your phone if you want to just know, hey, what's happening with the job market? Economy Now, I was playing with it this morning. It's right there. It tells you what's the current unemployment rate. It tells you information about the labor force. It probably answers the questions that you were asking about, and I'm going to go look up when we finish. But lots of resources. And one more thing that's really easy, and then I'm going to shut up, is have your kids prepare for existing jobs, even if they're not ready to get said jobs. Go to company career sites. Use the Fed, for example. Go to any company website. Look at those job postings. Look at those, any kind of openings they have. Use what's happening around them to help them prepare for their future. They can use they can learn the current language. They can look at what's being asked for. They can look at the criteria. They can still go back to the BLS, which is always a great thing, but now we can look at what's happening in our own backyard. I encourage that tremendously. Use what's around us. And if you've looked every place else, go to our main website, federalreserveeducation.org, and if you look there and can't find anything, write to me. I was going to say call me, but don't call me because I don't answer the phone. You will have this information. I think it's in the book, but I promise you, I will email every one of you this presentation, plus it will have the links, all of the links of the articles that I used, as well as the lessons that are here, and you can go ahead and do whatever you will. So with that, I do thank you for your attention. Just be thinking about the world around us, because all the personal financial information that we have and that we learn and that we need depends on us being able to earn some money to have to spend, right? So let's feel and watch the changes around us.
Thank you.
Let's give Claire a hand.
Great job as always, Claire.
We are going to take a 10-minute break. 10-minute break, take a restroom, get a snack, and come on back. 10 minutes. We'll be right back. We'll have your prize when we come back.